If you're over 60 and spending a long time sitting in the bathroom, straining hard but still feeling like you haven't fully emptied your bowels, then the danger isn't just constipation. What's even more concerning is what happens when stool sits in the colon for too long. Your body keeps pulling water out of it. Hour by hour, it becomes drier, harder, and much more difficult to pass. That's why so many older adults begin living with constant bloating, heaviness in the stomach, poor appetite, and restless sleep. Yet assume it's just a normal part of aging. But the truth is, it isn't. According to statistics, nearly half of adults over 60 experience irregular bowel movements at least once a week. And what surprised me most is that many of them already drink enough water, eat vegetables every day, and even rely on laxatives. Yet the problem still doesn't improve long term. After years of working with older adults struggling with digestive issues, I've realized something very important. Most people focus only on forcing the bowels to move faster, while forgetting that the gut works a lot like a muscle, and when it gradually loses its natural rhythm with age, pushing it harder isn't always the best solution. That's exactly why today I want to talk to you about 4 nuts that I personally consider some of the most helpful for adults over 60 dealing with constipation, dry stool, or difficult bowel movements. Not because they're miracle cures, but because each one supports a different problem inside the digestive system. One helps pull moisture back into the stool. One helps feed healthy gut bacteria. One supports the muscles of the intestines so they contract more smoothly. And one is so unique that many people say they started feeling lighter and more comfortable after just a week or two of eating it consistently. But here's the interesting part. The most powerful nut on this list is something many people have walked past in the grocery store for years without realizing it may completely change how their gut works every morning. One of the biggest misunderstandings people have about constipation after 60 is thinking the problem is only about fiber. So they start eating more vegetables, drinking more juice, switching to whole grains. But a few days later, everything feels the same again. The stomach still feels heavy. The bloating still shows up at night, and every morning walking into the bathroom still comes with that same familiar pressure. But the digestive system doesn't work like a simple pipe that only needs more fiber to function properly. As the body ages, at least 3 important things begin changing at the same time. First, the muscles in the intestines start slowing down. The colon depends on steady, rhythmic contractions to push waste out of the body, but with age, that rhythm weakens. Just like leg muscles are no longer as strong as they used to be. As a result, food and waste stay in the intestines longer, and the longer stool sits there, the drier it becomes. Second, the gut microbiome starts losing balance. This is something many people never think about. Inside the gut are trillions of bacteria that help send signals controlling bowel movement. When healthy gut bacteria decline because of aging, medications, or a nutrient-poor diet, the intestines stop communicating with the body as efficiently. That's why some people eat relatively healthy diets, but still struggle with sluggish digestion. And finally, there's a mistake I see very often in older adults, relying too heavily on stimulant laxatives. At first, they may help trigger faster bowel movements, but over time, the intestines can become even lazier because they're constantly being forced to work instead of moving naturally on their own. A report from the American Gastroenterological Association once showed that chronic constipation can seriously affect quality of life in older adults, from sleep and appetite to daytime energy levels. What's concerning is that many people live with it for years without realizing their body is quietly asking for help. That's why today I'm not just talking about eating more fiber. What I really want you to understand is that certain nuts can support several different mechanisms inside the digestive system at the same time. And the first one is especially helpful for people who constantly deal with dry, hard stool that's difficult to pass in the morning. Nut number 1, almonds. Many older adults eat almonds simply because they believe they're good for the heart or help keep them full longer. But what people rarely talk about is how almonds can support digestion in a way very few snack foods can after age 60. The biggest benefit comes from the fact that they help both stool, softness, and bowel movement at the same time. As we age, stool doesn't just become less frequent, it also becomes drier. And the drier it gets, the harder the colon has to work to push it out. That's why many older adults constantly feel a heavy pressure in the lower abdomen. Some people even have bowel movements every day, but still feel backed up because the stool isn't being fully eliminated. Almonds help improve this in two different ways. First, there's the fiber, but not the kind of rough, heavy fiber that simply leaves you feeling bloated. Almonds contain both soluble and insoluble fiber. One type helps hold water inside the stool so it stays softer. The other helps add enough bulk for the intestines to move it through more easily. This combination becomes especially important after 60, when the colon often responds less effectively to small dietary changes. The second reason I value almonds so highly is magnesium. A surprising number of older adults are low in magnesium without realizing it. And when magnesium levels are low, the muscles in the intestines often become weaker. You can think of it like an arm trying to push something heavy without enough strength behind it. The intestines work the same way. They rely on smooth, rhythmic contractions to move waste forward. When those movements slow down, stool stays in the colon longer and continues losing moisture. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that regular almond consumption helped improve intestinal transit time and increase stool output in adults. What's interesting is that this effect didn't happen by forcing the intestines to move like stimulant laxatives do. It happened more gradually, more naturally, and in a much steadier way. And that's a major difference. Most people over 60 don't actually need something extremely aggressive. What they really need is help restoring the body's natural rhythm. And here's a mistake I see all the time. Many people snack on salted roasted almonds while barely drinking any water throughout the day. That can actually leave the stomach feeling heavier. A better approach is eating a small amount in the morning when the colon is naturally most active. For example, you can add sliced almonds to warm oatmeal with banana or flaxseed. That combination of fiber, warm fluids, and healthy fats often creates a better environment for the intestines to start moving after a long night. And what I want you to notice isn't just easier bowel movements. Many people also report less bloating by the end of the day, a better appetite, and a noticeable reduction in that heavy feeling in the stomach after a few weeks of consistency. But almonds mainly improve stool structure and support intestinal muscle movement. The next nut works in a completely different way. It helps change the environment inside the gut itself, which plays a major role in whether your intestines stay active or sluggish day after day. Nut number 2, walnuts. If almonds help improve stool softness and support the muscles of the intestines, walnuts work on something much deeper, the gut microbiome. And this is something most older adults have never really had explained to them clearly. Inside your intestines, there's more than just food being digested. Trillions of bacteria live there every single day. Some help produce vitamins, some support the immune system, and some act like messengers that help signal when the colon should contract and move waste out of the body. When we're younger, the gut microbiome is usually more diverse and active, but after age 60, things begin to change. Medications, long-term stress, poor sleep, low fiber intake, or years of antibiotic use can significantly reduce healthy gut bacteria. And when that happens, the intestines often become slower and more sluggish without people understanding why. That's where walnuts become so interesting. Walnuts contain omega-3 fatty acids and plant compounds that help support the growth of beneficial gut bacteria. And this matters more than most people realize because a healthy microbiome helps produce short-chain fatty acids that nourish the lining of the colon and support more natural bowel movement. In other words, walnuts don't just add more fiber. They help restore the kind of gut environment the body needs in order to function smoothly on its own. I remember one case involving a woman named Linda, a 68-year-old retired elementary school teacher from Oregon. She ate fairly healthy most of the time with salads and fruit almost every day, but she constantly complained about feeling bloated and tight in the stomach by evening, especially after dinner. Some days she would sit in the bathroom for a long time and still feel like she hadn't fully emptied her bowels. What stood out to me was that when I looked closely at her diet, she had very little healthy fat and almost no consistent foods that supported healthy gut bacteria. So she started replacing her afternoon snack with a small handful of walnuts and added plain yogurt with oatmeal in the morning. After a little more than 2 weeks, the first thing she noticed wasn't more frequent bowel movements. It was that her stomach felt lighter, less tight after dinner. And by the 3rd week, She told me she had started feeling a natural urge to go in the morning again instead of having to force it. And that's an important difference. A healthy digestive system isn't just about pushing stool out faster. It's about helping the body regain a natural bowel rhythm without depending on medications or excessive straining. And this is something I really want you to remember if you're over 60. Not every case of constipation comes from a lack of fiber. Sometimes the gut is missing the very bacteria that help it function properly. A small amount of walnuts each day, especially when paired consistently with probiotic-rich foods, can create a much bigger difference than most people expect. But even with healthy gut bacteria, there's still another factor that directly affects whether stool moves smoothly through the colon or not. And the next nut supports that mechanism in a way very few people know about. Nut number 3, pecans. There's one thing very few people connect to constipation, even though it directly affects whether stool stays soft and moves comfortably each day. And that is bile flow. When we're younger, the liver and gallbladder usually work very efficiently. Bile is released steadily to help digest fats and keep waste moving more smoothly through the intestines. But after age 60, this process often starts slowing down without people realizing it. And when bile flow decreases, a very specific type of constipation tends to appear. The stool isn't necessarily too small, but it becomes dry, heavy, and slow-moving. Some people describe it as feeling like everything is stuck in the lower abdomen, even though they drink enough water and eat vegetables regularly. That's one reason I consider pecans one of the most underrated nuts for older adults struggling with digestion. Unlike almonds, which focus more on stool structure, or walnuts, which strongly support the microbiome, pecans help the digestive system in a more natural, lubricating way from the inside. The healthy fats and plant compounds in pecans help support bile release and create a smoother environment for waste to move through the colon more comfortably. This can be especially helpful for people who constantly feel like they have to strain hard or still don't feel fully relieved after a bowel movement. Pecans are also rich in polyphenols, a group of plant compounds linked to colon health and healthy gut bacteria. What's interesting is that these polyphenols don't work like medication. Instead, they gradually improve the environment inside the gut over time, helping the colon respond more smoothly to natural elimination. A review published in the journal Nutrients in 2025 highlighted that the bioactive compounds found in pecans may support the gut microbiome and improve digestive function through several different mechanisms, especially in older adults with sluggish bowel movement. But there is something I consider even more important than the research itself, and that is how you feel after a bowel movement. Many people focus only on how often they go to the bathroom, but in reality, feeling fully emptied, lighter, and free from pressure is often a much better sign that the colon is functioning properly, and pecans tend to help a lot in that area because they support smoother movement of waste instead of allowing it to stay compressed and dry for too long. One simple approach many older adults can try is eating a small amount of pecans later in the day, along with warm oatmeal or plain yogurt. The intestines naturally begin slowing down in the evening, so gentle digestive support often works better than overloading the body with large amounts of dry fiber. And here's what's interesting. When bowel movements become easier, many people notice more than just digestive improvement. They also sleep better, experience less bloating at night, and wake up feeling lighter the next morning. But even if the colon starts moving more smoothly, there's still one major factor that determines whether stool stays soft or gradually becomes dry and hard again after a few days. And the final nut on this list works directly on that exact issue. Nut number 4, pistachios. If you often deal with stool that's dry, hard, small, and difficult to pass even after a lot of straining, this may be the nut that creates the biggest difference for you on today's list. And the reason comes down to something most people have never heard about: the ability to help retain moisture inside the stool. Most people assume constipation is simply caused by not enough fiber. But in reality, many people already get enough fiber and still struggle with dry stool. That happens because the colon is pulling too much water out of waste while it moves slowly through the intestines. When this continues for days, the stool becomes harder, more compacted, and much more difficult to eliminate. Older adults often describe it as feeling like their body has to fight every time they go to the bathroom. And the harder the straining becomes, the greater the pressure placed on the lower abdomen, rectum, and blood vessels. That's one reason digestive specialists pay very close attention to dry stool in adults over 60. What makes pistachios different is that they do more than simply add fiber. They contain prebiotic fiber, the type of fiber that feeds healthy gut bacteria and helps produce short-chain fatty acids inside the colon. These compounds play an important role in maintaining a healthy intestinal lining and creating a more stable environment inside the digestive tract. Put simply, pistachios help the colon maintain a healthier natural moisture balance instead of allowing waste to dry out too quickly. I remember one case involving a man named Daniel, a 72-year-old retired truck driver living in Arizona. He told me the hardest part wasn't going to the bathroom less often. It was the fact that every morning he had to mentally prepare himself just to try. Some days he would sit there for nearly half an hour, only to pass a very small amount that was dry and extremely hard. For years, he had become heavily dependent on laxatives, but the more frequently he used them, the harder it became for his intestines to function naturally without assistance. After changing his diet, one of the first things he did was add a small portion of unsalted pistachios in the evening, along with Greek yogurt and soft fruit. The goal wasn't to force a bowel movement immediately, it was to gradually improve the environment inside the gut over time. After a little more than 2 weeks, he started noticing that his stool felt softer in the morning. He wasn't straining nearly as much, and what surprised him most was that his stomach no longer felt tight and uncomfortable every night like before. And that's something I really want older adults to understand. A healthy digestive system usually doesn't feel aggressive. It feels gentle, natural, and much less stressful on the body. A recent study published in Current Developments in Nutrition also reported that regular pistachio consumption was associated with positive changes in the gut microbiome and stool environment in adults. But before you start adding large amounts of these nuts into your diet every day, there's something very important I want you to remember. And this is also the reason many people say, I tried eating more fiber, but my stomach actually felt worse. The problem isn't always the food itself. Sometimes the real issue is how the body's using it. Fiber works a lot like a sponge. It needs water to help keep stools soft and easy to move. If the body doesn't have enough water, fiber can actually become thicker and heavier inside the intestines, instead of helping things move smoothly. That is why some people begin eating more nuts, whole grains, or raw vegetables, but end up feeling bloated, tight, or heavier by the end of the day. This is especially common in adults over 60 because the sensation of thirst naturally decreases with age. Many people think they're drinking enough water when in reality the body stays mildly dehydrated throughout the day without them realizing it. And when the colon lacks water, it continues pulling moisture out of waste in order to preserve fluids for the body. The result is stool that becomes drier, harder, and more difficult to pass the next morning. That is why I often encourage older adults not to change everything too quickly. You don't need to start eating huge amounts of nuts right away. The intestines usually respond much better to small, consistent changes. A moderate amount each day combined with warm fluids and light movement is often far more effective than trying to overload the body with fiber for a few days and then giving up. One simple habit I strongly recommend is taking a slow walk for about 10 to 15 minutes after dinner. Gentle movement helps stimulate natural bowel activity without putting extra stress on the digestive system. And when that's combined with the right kinds of nuts, many people begin noticing a lighter stomach in the morning after just a week or two. Also, pay attention to how you eat. Eating too quickly, eating while watching TV, or consuming large amounts of nuts all at once can make digestion harder on the body. For older adults, the gut usually responds better to consistency than overload. The most important goal isn't forcing the body to have a bowel movement as quickly as possible. It's creating the right environment for the colon to gradually regain its natural rhythm. And when that starts happening, the changes people notice usually go far beyond the bathroom. Many begin sleeping better, feeling less tired in the morning, and carrying a lighter, more comfortable feeling throughout the entire day. At this point, the most important thing I want you to remember is this. Constipation after age 60 is not always a sign that the body is beyond help. In many cases, the intestines are simply missing the right conditions to function the way they used to. Almonds help support the muscles of the intestines and improve stool structure. Walnuts help nourish the gut microbiome and reduce that sluggish digestive feeling. Pecans help waste move more smoothly through the colon, and pistachios help maintain a healthier environment inside the intestines, so stool is less likely to become dry and hard over time. And the good news is you don't need to change everything at once. Sometimes one small habit done consistently every day creates a much bigger difference than aggressive, short-term solutions. The body tends to respond best to gentleness, consistency, and patience as we get older. So here's a very simple 14-day challenge I'd love for you to try. Each day, choose one of the 4 nuts we talked about today in a moderate amount. Drink an extra glass of warm water in the morning, and spend about 10 minutes taking a light walk after dinner. And don't focus only on bowel movements. Pay attention to whether your stomach feels lighter, whether you sleep better, whether your mornings feel less heavy and uncomfortable. A lot of people only realize how deeply digestion affects the entire body once they finally start feeling better again. And now I'd really love to hear from you. Out of the 4 nuts we talked about today, which one would you want to try first? Or if you've already tried one of them, share how your body responded in the comments below. I always read those experiences, and your story might end up helping someone else going through the same thing. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because in the next video, I'm going to talk about a nighttime drink that many older adults consume every single day without realizing it may be drying out their stool all night long. If this story changes the way you look at your digestive health and the simple foods in your kitchen, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. We are uncovering the health secrets that they have tried to keep hidden. Let's cultivate a healthier future together. The next treasure of wellness will be revealed soon.